Hi everyone. Glad to be back. So for the next session, for the next little bit, we have Judith Passingham. Sorry, cut myself in a lisp there. And my cook today presenting, do androids dream of electric research? And that is quite a good question, actually, do they? Quick answer, one word answer, yes or no? Of course. Absolutely. So it's a very interesting white paper that you've written about, but let's just start on a couple of easy questions. Just introduce yourselves, like who are you? Like how have you been with Esomar?
My name's Mike Cook and I chair the Legal Affairs Committee at Esomar. And I've been a member of Esomar forever. I was on council for about 10 years. I was the vice president for a while, and for the last 6 years I've been chairing the Legal Affairs Committee.
So my name's Judith Passingham and I'm the chair of the Professional Standards Committee at Esomar, and I've been doing that for almost 3 years now. And before that I worked in Ipsos and in Kantar in various research management roles.
Okay.
And I've really enjoyed working with Mike on this paper.
Oh, that's good to hear. So let's just start with a very general question. What is AI? How do you define artificial intelligence?
It's very, very difficult to define. This is a major problem for everybody. And the best way the traditional way of thinking about it is to concentrate on the word intelligence. And so you get definitions which are related to if a machine behaves the way that a human would behave. There's only one problem with that, of course, is that machines can act very, very differently from humans. So the modern way of thinking about it is less to concentrate on the intelligence aspect and much more to concentrate on the elements that are involved. So if you take, for example, the European Union's white paper on AI, they just say anything that involves data, algorithms, models, and/or predictions is AI. And that is so wide that you would think, well, what is not included in AI? And this was one of the driving things that made Judith and I start to think about AI and end up writing this white paper, because I think most researchers don't appreciate the fact that a lot of what they do will be deemed and is deemed to be AI. And there's a very interesting quote where one of the key authors in this space, in his book Superintelligence, writes about the moment something becomes normalized, we don't think of it as AI. So when I go into my house now, I automatically go, Google, put on Radio 4. And Google puts it on. And then I say, oh, how long should I cook my lamb for? And of course, I don't think of this as AI. But of course, that's what it is. But it's a normal part of my life. And it's like everything we do on our phone, really. So one of the things that we're really concerned about is the fact that researchers will be caught up in the regulations going forward almost without realizing it, because the regulators will not take a narrow view of AI. They will take a very, very broad view of what they consider to be AI. And that basically is just going to be data plus algorithms plus models. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think you've covered it quite well.
Oh, thank you.
And have you attempted to come up with a definition in here to narrow it down in any way? Or have you retained sort of general...
We've retained basically the definitions that are involved in the proposed legislation. What we don't want to do is narrow it down, because we don't want researchers to think, well, as long as I'm doing that, I'm not doing that, and therefore the regulation doesn't apply to me. I think going forward, we may start to try and define it down, but my guess is we won't. Because the regulators themselves, the governments, the legislators, the academics, have moved away really from very narrow definitions. I mean, you've got two basic concepts really in AI. You've got a sort of general AI, which is 2001, The Matrix, all of that. It's all general AI. But in reality, AI is much narrower. It tends to be for a specific purpose. And one of the definitions, which I like a lot, is the definition of AI is if a machine does that which achieves that objective for which it is programmed. So, and that is really interesting because it puts into it a whole series of ethical, does it achieve it? So you've got here, I want it to do X, and in the middle, the stuff happens. So data goes in. Is that data biased? Is that data, has that data been tested? Is the algorithm working in the way that I want it to work? Is that algorithm supervised? Does it produce the output that I wanted it to produce? So a very simple definition like that, once you start to unpack it, becomes really interesting, and it has all sorts of implications for marketing research. And those implications really go to things like the sample, is the sample biased? What happens if the sample is biased and it's put into service as a software AI type system and produces an automatic decision that stops you from getting your credit rating? So if you get stopped your credit rating unfairly, who's responsible? And you can take it right back to the people who do the original sample on which it's all based. And that sort of unpacking, I think, is going to be very, very interesting going forward. And I think most researchers have no concept that they could be caught up in this long supply chain, because market research is usually part of a much bigger supply chain.
What would you say are the benefits to AI in market research and insights?
The benefits, I mean, building on the definitional point. So you've got this sort of what the legislators are viewing, which obviously we have to pay attention to. But then you've got this sort of, if you look underneath and you look at the way that the market's evolving, you can see these subcategories of AI appearing. So, like the ability to understand visual patterns and that sort of thing, sort of other capabilities. So it's kind of like it's fragmenting and fissuring. And I think as we keep an eye on what's going on underneath there, we'll see the applications from the research perspective. But what we did when we started investigating this interesting area is we looked at the new launches that there were in the AI field. And we found one of the characteristics of the market research industry is that it's very craft driven. So there's been various aspects, particularly from the operations perspective. It's quite difficult to automate things, but sort of like when you look at some of the AI applications that are coming on stream now, in terms of the releases, you'll see this described in our paper, you'll see things like sampling, coding, text mining, that kind of thing. And then you'll see applications around reusing data that's produced in continuous longitudinal data sets, or things like copy testing, where you build up sort of an understanding and a learning. So all sorts of things in research are ripe for sort of activity.
Excellent. So moving on to, obviously the industry is there's a lot of clients that will be interested in it. How would they benefit from AI in market research?
Well, I think in the way, maybe we should go back to what the clients, because, as part of the voyage of discovery around AI, we did some group discussions with clients.
Major clients.
Yeah, major clients, global clients of research. And sort of, we asked them all sorts of things from the sort of legislative kind of considerations, privacy considerations, in terms of what they actually wanted. Yeah. And sort of, it was quite, it was very varied. Sort of like they want to understand what's going on from a legislation perspective and sort of to be kept up to date with that, but that's something that we would do anyway. But they also want to understand what's a real AI innovation and what isn't. So look, everyone's coming and knocking on my door and saying everything they do is fueled by AI, but the clients want to know whether it's real or not. And they really want that visibility. So I think Esomar's got potentially a role to play there. They also want to know who the reliable AI practitioners are. So it might be small companies or innovative companies that are operating in this area. And they want to know how they can access AI skills. that sort of thing. So it's quite a varied set of requirements. And because everybody is saying that everything is AI fueled at the moment, you've probably seen it yourself.
Absolutely.
And so I think all of these represent areas that Esomar and working with the local associations can really play a major role in how our industry is responding to this, and sort of, avoid some of the pitfalls maybe by doing that. Yeah.
And so, with Esomar, ethics is at the core of what we do, really. So, how would that, in a way, some of the criticism that I've seen of AI is, for example, in some sectors where the question is AI racist? And it's it comes down to the input of the data, into the biases involved in that. How would a researcher going and find out whether there is bias in the data? How important is that into discovering into that? I mean,
it's absolutely crucial. If there is one area that you would point your finger at the moment, it would be the testing data. I mean, most AI systems have been tested amongst white men, and I mean men, because even things like safety belts are not tested against women. It's crazy what's been going on, and women have not been involved in most of the AI developments as users, as consumers, as people who experience the AI. So what we're going to need to do much more is really to look at what's called the testing data, the data that generates the algorithm which is then applied to the population. So for classically trained market researchers like ourselves, this is nothing new. I mean, what we would argue is that anything that you're projecting to a wider population should only be developed on the basis of a representative subsample of that wider population. That has not been true in AI. And if you look at things like the EU regulations, what the EU is saying is that there is a real democratic deficit. What you've got is an elite group of people, small, white, male, men, 30, 40, who are basically developing systems that are applied to the wider population, and that inequality, and that's the words they use, that inequality needs to be addressed. Now, Judith and I both take a very strong position that this is a really big opportunity for marketing research, because we have the skills, the techniques to develop representative, unbiased testing data going in. But it is a real obligation, and it is not easy. It's much easier to take an unbiased subset of a sample. But if your credit rating, again, is not allowed, or you're a woman and the medication that's being prescribed to you has never been tested on women, it's just been given to them, this cannot be right. And we think strongly that we need to make a strong moral and ethical case why our industry must produce unbiased representative testing data on which the algorithms are built.
And I think it practically means that researchers these days need to be very clear about whether the data they're producing is going into an AI-based program as a training data set, and to make sure that they ask all the right questions, because there are also liability issues here if things go wrong. And so it's got serious ramifications, as well as being, morally and ethically questionable. So I think that aspect's pretty important. So, we've laid this ethical framework on the table, and we're really hoping that the Esomar Council, the new DG, the Esomar President, will take up what we've thrown down. We've thrown some firecrackers on the floor.
Absolutely.
And we think it's a really important topic for the industry.
Absolutely. And I am honestly, as a member of the communications team, I am incredibly excited to be working on this when things are being set into motion with the council, and best of luck with that. I'm sure they'll be taking it on like hotcakes. So thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. It's been incredibly fascinating. And like I said, I can't wait to find out more.
And can we just make a little plug for everybody to look at the paper and read the paper? It's slightly long, but it's a good bedtime read.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you both.